Neighbors don't belong in boardrooms, just like you don't belong in my life.
The boat was the first thing Karen noticed the day I brought it home. It was impossible not to notice. Really a sleek, deep blue offshore cruiser with chrome rails that caught the sun just right. $120,000 of fiberglass, engineering, and freedom. I had worked nearly 2 decades for it, countless overtime hours, missed vacations, and long nights that ended with grease under my fingernails and exhaustion in my bones. When I finally backed it into my driveway, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. That feeling lasted exactly 12 minutes. I was still unhooking the trailer when I heard the sharp click of heels on concrete. I didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Karen had a way of announcing herself without saying a word. Tight posture, rigid steps, the faint rustle of paperwork clutched like a weapon. "You can't park that here." Her voice sliced through the air before I'd even killed the truck engine. I turned slowly. There she stood at the edge of my driveway, HOA clipboard tucked under one arm, phone already in her hand like she was prepared to document a crime scene. Her lips were pressed into that familiar thin line, the one she wore whenever she thought she had leverage. "It's temporary," I said calmly. "I'm taking it to the marina this weekend." She laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A laugh that said she was already enjoying what came next. "Oh no," she replied. "That violates HOA by Section 8.4.2. No boats, trailers, or recreational vessels may be stored on residential property, not even temporarily." I wiped my hands on a rag and stood upright. "It's my property. I own the house. And the bylaws allow temporary parking for loading and unloading." Karen's eyes flicked down to her clipboard. "Not this kind of vessel," she said smugly. "Anything over 20 feet requires prior HOA approval." The boat was 22 feet. I could already feel it tightening in my chest. The familiar warning sign that this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. Karen didn't care about rules. She cared about control. And nothing attracted her attention like something expensive that didn't belong to her. Over the next few days, the harassment escalated. First came the email's formal cold, filled with capital letters and phrases like "immediate compliance required." Then came the fines. $250 for unauthorized storage, $500 for visual obstruction, another $300 for community aesthetic disruption. I appealed every single one. I cited bylaws. I quoted state property codes. It didn't matter. Karen rejected them all. She began driving past my house several times a day. Sometimes she'd stop, take photos, and shake her head dramatically. Other times she'd stand at the edge of the sidewalk, arms crossed, staring at the boat like it had personally insulted her. Neighbors noticed one afternoon. My next-door neighbor leaned over the fence and whispered, "She's obsessed with that thing. You might want to be careful." That was when I realized something important. Karen wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to take something. The HOA had a clause, one most people never read. If a property item was deemed abandoned, in violation, or posing community risk, the HOA could authorize its removal and storage at the owner's expense. Karen had used it before: trash cans, old sheds, even a motorcycle once. But a $120,000 boat? That was different. That was a prize. I moved the boat exactly where my attorney advised, fully within my property line. Wheels chalked, hitch locked, cameras installed. I notified the HOA in writing of its temporary presence and scheduled marina transport. I did everything by the book. Karen didn't care. On the 4th morning, I woke up to the sound of diesel engines. At first, I thought it was a delivery truck. Then I checked my phone. 3 missed alerts. Motion detected. Front driveway camera offline. I ran outside barefoot. The boat was gone. In its place were tire marks, a broken hitch lock, and a bright orange notice zip-tied to my mailbox. HOA removal notice, property seized for non-compliance. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned. $120,000 gone. My hands shook as I read the notice again. It claimed the boat had been lawfully confiscated and moved to a secured storage facility pending fine resolution. There was no address, no contact number, just Karen's signature at the bottom, bold and deliberate. Neighbors gathered, phones came out, whispers spread, and then Karen arrived. She parked slowly across the street, stepped out, and walked toward me with a smile that made my stomach turn. "You should have complied," she said sweetly. "Now it's out of our hands." I stared at her. "You stole my boat." She tilted her head. "No, the HOA reclaimed it. There's a difference." I could see it in her eyes, the thrill, the confidence, the certainty that she'd won. She believed she had found the perfect loophole, something expensive enough to hurt, complicated enough to intimidate, and just gray enough legally that most people would panic. She thought I was most people. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that the boat wasn't just a boat, that it was GPS tracked, insured, documented, monitored, and the moment it left my driveway, a chain of events had already begun, legally and irreversibly. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I didn't even argue. I smiled. "Okay," I said, "let's see how this plays out." Karen's smile widened, confident and careless. She had no idea she'd just walked straight into a setup that would cost her far more than she could imagine, and this time, there would be no clipboard big enough to save her. Karen didn't even bother hiding her satisfaction. The morning after the boat disappeared, she was already telling her version of the story. I found out later from neighbors that she'd been walking door to door, clipboard tucked under her arm like a victory flag, explaining how the HOA had successfully handled a serious violation. According to her, she had protected the neighborhood from reckless behavior and property value threats. A stolen boat, framed as community service. When I checked my email, my inbox was full formal HOA notices, penalty summaries, storage invoices, and one final message from Karen herself. Once all fines, removal costs, and administrative fees are paid, the HOA may consider releasing the vessel. The total came to just over $18,000. She thought that number would scare me. Instead, it confirmed exactly what I needed to know. Karen believed she was untouchable. I called the number listed on the invoice. It rang twice before going to voicemail. No company name, no address, just a generic message. I searched the storage facility online. It didn't exist. I took screenshots, saved emails, printed every notice. Then I made one phone call Karen never expected. My insurance company. The agent went quiet when I explained what happened. Just to confirm, she said carefully, you're saying a private HOA authorized the removal of a fully insured, registered marine vessel from your private driveway without a court order? Yes, and you did not consent. No. There was a pause. Sir, she said, this is no longer a civil matter. That was the first crack in Karen's fantasy. By noon, a claims investigator was assigned. By evening, my phone buzzed with updates, requests for documentation, timestamps, camera footage. I sent everything, including the GPS data. The boat's tracker showed movement at 4:12 a.m., a stop 27 minutes later, then another relocation 2 hours after that. Whoever moved it hadn't disabled the system. Either they didn't know it existed or they didn't think it mattered. Karen assumed the HOA badge gave her immunity. She assumed wrong. Meanwhile, she grew bolder. She sent a mass email to the neighborhood reminding everyone that unauthorized vessels would be dealt with swiftly and decisively. She even posted a blurry photo of my empty driveway as proof of HOA efficiency. Neighbors noticed the tone shift. Some applauded her. Others started asking questions. Where's the boat stored? Why wasn't the owner notified beforehand? Isn't that grand theft? Karen shut those conversations down fast. Comments were deleted. Threads locked. Anyone who pushed too hard received a warning about disruptive behavior. Fear had worked for her before. She thought it would work again. That afternoon, I did something she never expected. I paid the fines, all of them, every ridiculous dollar. I wanted her relaxed, confident, careless. Within an hour, I received a curt reply. Payment received. HOA will coordinate vessel release within 3 to 5 business days. 3 to 5 days. Plenty of time. Behind the scenes, the situation was accelerating rapidly. The insurance company escalated the claim to their legal recovery unit because the boat was valued over 6 figures and crossed municipal boundaries. They flagged it for law enforcement coordination, not patrol officers, investigators. The marina registry was checked. No lawful transfer, no lien. No court order. Just a paper trail leading straight back to Karen and the HOA. The best part, Karen was unknowingly documenting everything herself. Every email, every notice, every signature. She even sent me a cheerful follow-up message reminding me that additional daily storage fees might apply. She couldn't stop digging. 2 days later, she called me. It was the first time she'd ever used my actual phone number. I wanted to personally let you know, she said, her voice dripping with artificial politeness, that the HOA acted fully within its authority. If you're thinking of taking legal action, I wouldn't recommend it. I smiled as I listened. I said, why is that? Because, she replied confidently, you'd lose, and it would be very expensive. There it was, that certainty, that smug belief, that rules only mattered when she interpreted them. I thanked her for the update and hung up. That same evening, a neighbor sent me a message. She's bragging, it read, says she finally put you in your place. I laughed out loud for the first time since the boat vanished. Karen didn't realize that by seizing the boat, herself by bypassing courts, police, and legal authorities she had done something extraordinary. She hadn't just crossed a line, she'd erased it. On the third day, the tracker updated again. The boat moved. This time, much farther. I forwarded the coordinates to the investigator. Within minutes, I got a reply. We have it. Thank you. That night, Karen hosted an HOA meeting. Attendance was unusually high. People wanted answers, transparency, proof that what she'd done was legal. She stood at the front of the room, confident as ever, explaining procedures and bylaws, dismissing concerns with rehearsed authority. What she didn't know was that while she spoke, multiple agencies were already piecing together the full picture: the fake storage company, the unauthorized tow, the financial motive, the misuse of HOA power, and most importantly, the evidence trail she'd left behind like BREADCRUMBS. Karen ended the meeting with a smile. She told everyone the issue was resolved. She said the HOA had won. She even joked about teaching a lesson. What she didn't see was the shift in the room. the unease, the realization that if she could do this to me, she could do it to anyone. As I went to bed that night, my phone buzzed one last time, a short message from the investigator. Do not contact her again. Let her continue. I set the phone down, calm and certain. Karen thought she was in control. She thought the boat was leverage. She thought she'd scared me into submission. In reality, she was standing on a trapdoor, one she had built herself, piece by piece, with every email, every fine, and every smug smile, and it was about to open. Karen's confidence lasted exactly 48 hours after the meeting. That was how long it took for reality to catch up with her. First sign something was wrong came early Thursday morning. Neighbors later told me she was outside before sunrise, pacing her driveway with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp and agitated. She wasn't yelling yet, but she was close. Whatever conversation she was having wasn't going the way she expected. By mid, the rumors started. 2 unmarked vehicles had been seen parked near the so-called storage facility. The fake address Karen had listed on the HOA paperwork. People whispered about police, insurance investigators, maybe even state authorities. No one knew for sure, but everyone knew something serious was happening. Karen knew too. She sent out a sudden HOA email titled Urgent Clarification. The tone was noticeably different this time, less smug, more defensive. Recent misinformation has been circulating regarding HOA enforcement actions. Please be advised that all actions were conducted in good faith and within perceived authority. Perceived authority. That word didn't belong there. It was the language of someone already backpedaling. I watched everything unfold from a distance, staying exactly where the investigator told me to. No responses, no confrontation, no warning. Karen was doing enough damage on her own. At 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Sir, a calm voice said, this is Detective Alvarez. We've recovered your vessel. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. It was located on private commercial property under an unauthorized storage agreement. He continued, the individuals involved are cooperating. That pause said everything. Thank you, I replied. You did exactly the right thing, he said. Now let us finish. Less than an hour later, Karen's street changed. 2 police cruisers rolled in first, then an unmarked SUV, then another. Neighbors came out onto their lawns, phones already in hand. This wasn't a noise complaint. This wasn't an HOA warning. This was something else, something heavy. Karen opened her front door. Just as an officer stepped onto her porch. From across the street, someone whispered, oh my God. The knock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Karen answered with a smile that froze halfway across her face when she saw the badges. Yes, she asked, forcing calm. Ma'am, the officer said, we need to speak with you regarding the removal and transfer of private property. Her eyes flicked down the street. She saw the neighbors, the phones, the attention. This is a misunderstanding, she said quickly. HOA matter. The detective stepped forward. No, he said evenly. It isn't. They asked to come inside. She hesitated. That hesitation was noted. Inside her house, the illusion shattered fast. Emails were printed, notices laid out, signatures highlighted, GPS logs displayed, tow invoices cross-referenced with non-existent business licenses. Karen tried to explain. She talked about bylaws, authority, precedent. The detective listened politely. Then he asked one question. Who authorized you to seize and relocate a 6-figure asset without owner consent or court order? Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Across the street, neighbors watched as she gestured wildly through the window, her confidence visibly draining. She was no longer the enforcer. She was the suspect. Word spread fast. Someone posted, police at Karen's house. Another replied, boat thing caught up with her. By the time the officers walked her outside, the street was silent. Karen wasn't in handcuffs, but she might as well have been. Her shoulders were slumped, her face pale. She tried to maintain composure, lifting her chin as she passed the neighbors she'd once intimidated. But no one looked away. No one nodded. No one defended her. She was placed in the back of the unmarked SUV. That was when the HOA board panicked. Emails flew, emergency calls were made, lawyers were contacted. They suspended Karen's enforcement authority within the hour. A formal notice went out to all residents, effective immediately. All HOA enforcement actions are paused pending legal review. Translation: we're distancing ourselves. That evening, I got another call. The boat is undamaged, the investigator said. Insurance will cover temporary loss. Charges are being evaluated. Against who? I asked. There was a pause. Against everyone who thought this was a good idea. Karen was released later that night, but she didn't come home. Her SUV stayed in the driveway. The lights in her house stayed off. Neighbors said she went straight to her attorney's office. The next day, her name disappeared from the HOA website. By the end of the week, the HOA issued a public apology. They refunded my fines, paid towing, restitution, covered legal costs. Karen was officially removed from the board, but the damage was already done. Her reputation built on fear and control was gone. Neighbors spoke openly now about past abuses, threats, overreach. Karen wasn't just exposed. She was remembered, and in this neighborhood, that mattered. As for me, I went to the marina and stood on the dock as my boat was returned to the water. The engine purred like nothing had ever happened. I ran a hand along the hull and smiled. Karen thought she'd stolen a boat. What she really stole was attention. And attention, once focused, had revealed everything. The setup was complete. All that remained was the final reckoning. Karen thought the worst was over once the police left and the HOA removed her from the board. She was wrong. What happened next wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There were no sirens or flashing lights. It was worse. It was paperwork. The kind that arrives quietly, one envelope at a time, each one stripping away another illusion of safety. The first letter came from the insurance company. They denied her claim. Immediately, she had tried to preemptively file a report claiming the boat had been abandoned and that the HOA had acted to prevent liability. The investigators had already flagged that statement as knowingly false. The letter was cold and precise. Coverage is denied due to intentional misconduct and material misrepresentation. That meant one thing. Every dollar from that tow, every storage fee, every legal cost. It was on her. The second letter came from the state licensing board. The towing company Karen had used wasn't properly licensed for maritime transport. Worse, records showed she had personally authorized the move using HOA letterhead despite having no legal authority to do so. That crossed a line. Investigation was opened into abuse of delegated authority. Then came the civil lawsuit. My attorney filed it without drama. Wrongful conversion, trespass to chattel, fraudulent misrepresentation, civil conspiracy. Karen was named personally. So were two HOA board members who had signed off without reading. The HOA tried to settle. I refused. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted precedent. Depositions followed. Karen sat across from me in a small conference room, a court reporter recording every word. She wore neutral colors now. No jewelry, no confidence. Did you authorize the removal of the boat? My attorney asked. Yes, she said quietly. Did you verify ownership before doing so? No. Did you have a court order? No. Did you believe you had the legal authority to seize private property worth over $100,000? Karen hesitated. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. I believed, she began. The attorney cut in. Belief isn't authority. Silence. One by one, her defenses fell apart under oath. The emails, the messages, the warnings, she ignored. The phrase "make an example of him" was read aloud. Karen didn't look up. Again. The settlement offer changed after that, significantly. Attorney requested mediation. This time I agreed. 3 hours later, it was over. Karen agreed to pay damages, legal fees, a formal written apology, and a binding agreement, barring her from holding any HOA position in the state. For 10 years, the HOA dissolved shortly after. They reformed under new management with strict limitations. Karen sold her house within 6 months. No farewell party, no goodbye. Email. Just a for sale sign that quietly appeared one morning. Neighbors noticed. They talked. Stories came out, not just about me. About fines, threats, harassment, selective enforcement. Karen hadn't just targeted one person. She had ruled through fear, and fear has a shelf life. On my last day in the neighborhood, I took the boat out early. The water was calm, the sky just starting to turn gold. As I passed the docks, someone waved. Another neighbor called out, "Safe sailing." It was simple. Human. Free. Later, I got one final message from a number I didn't recognize. I never thought it would go this far. I was just trying to maintain order. I didn't reply. Order doesn't require theft. Authority doesn't require intimidation. Empower real power doesn't panic when the truth shows up. Karen thought stealing my boat would teach me a lesson. Did just not the one she planned? Because the moment she crossed that line, the outcome was inevitable. The setup wasn't revenge, it was exposure. And exposure always wins.